Hey everyone, you are listening to the Grace Auburn Church Podcast. My name is Lee, and I serve as the host of this podcast and one of our pastors on staff at Grace Auburn Church. And today we are continuing a series titled, Why Would You Want to Work for a Church? This has become our way of introducing folks as they've come onto our staff team. And today I have the fantastic pleasure of being joined by my brother, Frank Vaughn. Frank, welcome to the Grace Auburn Church Podcast.
Oh, man, so glad to be here.
We are, as we think about the faithfulness of God over the course of the life of this church, we like to say and remind ourselves in conversation as staff, but also remind the church that each and every single person that comes through the doors and becomes a member of this church is brought into our family at the right time for a specific purpose, whether they be in vocational ministry or in lay leadership or volunteering, or whether that's making coffee or holding babies or serving in the band. The Lord has faithfully grown this church with the right people at the right time, and that is certainly true of you and your wonderful family. As we think about your calling to this church and to serve this church as one of our pastors on staff now, I'd love for us to go back a little bit and let you jump in and share your story from wherever it is that you want to begin that, of the Lord's faithfulness in your life to have saved you, called you His own, and then what that journey was like for you going into vocational ministry. What I love about your story is it's a commitment to the Lord. Wherever He said go, you and your family have said yes. Matt likes to say that part of being a part of a church plant, as we grow from a church plant into an established church, is continuing to put your yes on the table, and you guys have done that time and time and time again. So yeah, I'd love for you to jump in wherever you want to begin your story, and we'll just see how the Lord leads this time on the podcast.
Yeah, man. So again, I'm so thankful to be here. So thankful to have this time with you and be able to have some fun on the podcast. So the Lord has used many people in my life along my life journey, and man, three of them come to mind, kind of the forefront of my mind, and that would be my mom, my grandmothers, actually my mom and both of my grandmothers. And with my mom, like I had mentioned before.
Time out. Frank and I got halfway through this podcast and realized I forgot to hit record. So if we reference back to a previous conversation, you haven't missed anything. The entire world, but Frank and I has actually missed that.
And here's the thing: I kept trying not to say that. I was like, man, I can't formulate the words. Sorry,
I don't understand the words that are coming out of your mouth.
So anyway, so as I was saying, so God placed three amazing women in my life, man, and those women are both of my grandmothers and my mom.
Yeah,
and I would wake up. There wasn't many mornings that I wouldn't wake up, or I would wake up and notice my mom sitting on the back porch with her Bible open and reading God's Word and praying. One of my grandmothers also spent time in the mission field, mostly in Central America, and so we would always hear stories as kids about her mission trips and what the Lord was doing in and through her, and man, so I heard the gospel as a kid, always heard the gospel, and I saw it lived out. And my other grandmother was the same way, just three very strong women of faith. And I'm so thankful that God placed them in my life. And at the age of 9 is really when I placed my faith in Jesus. And it was due to kind of my eyes were opened with some circumstances, with some tragedies that took place. And, one of which was I lost my best friend at the age of 9 years old with a battle. He lost his battle with cancer. And so, man, through those situations, through those conversations, man, I began to really see and understand more my need for Christ.
Yeah.
And that was when the Holy Spirit began to draw me in. And I'm so thankful for the people that kind of surrounded me during that time, because He really used all of those people in very unique and awesome ways. So that's a little bit about my testimony and coming to faith in Christ. And man, I have been married to my wife, Amy, for 23 years this June.
Let's go.
Right? 23 years in this June. High school sweethearts.
Yes.
We went to different high schools, but, like 10 minutes apart, something like that is where we grew up. And so, yeah, I've been married for 23 years. So excited and so thankful for Amy. Man, I know that you know her and have known her, man, and man, just such an amazing woman. I don't know much that Amy's tried that she hasn't been successful at. And one of those things is loving me and loving our
Yeah.
kids and just being an amazing mom and wife. And I'm so thankful to God for blessing me with Amy. We've got 3 beautiful, smart daughters, Haven, Layton, and Caroline. And man, being a dad is just amazing.
That's so good.
Man, I'm so thankful that God blessed us with kids. And so, so we've been in this area for about 5 years now. Been involved in this church for, I think we've been here for like 3 years.
Yeah.
3-ish years. We came and were members and joined and served and all those things, man. And we've absolutely loved our time here at Grace Auburn. And
All right, so let's do this. I'd love to go let's go back to pre you guys getting here. We'll get to getting into Grace Auburn. And again, Amy has been on the podcast as well, having recorded her. Why would you want to work for a church? If you want to hear more about her journey into our staff team, starting with kids, into hospitality, now serving as the director of hospitality, that's a fantastic conversation as well. She also does podcasts as well. She kept you straight for 23 years or longer,
dude.
And now she's keeping the rest of us straight around here.
That's right.
It feels like in so many ways. And so we are thankful for Amy. We are thankful for you. I mentioned at the very beginning that you guys showed up here with a very clear, how can we serve? What can we do? I think there are so many people who show up in a variety of ways to a local church, but one of the things we are always looking for in leaders and future leaders is who is already doing the work, like who came in looking for a job, not a literal job, but who came in looking for ways to serve the body of believers here. And you guys did that from the very jump. But if we can go back to Mississippi for just a minute, let's walk through your story of not only coming to faith, faithful women, the faithfulness of God through those women in multiple generations to have brought you to know Him. But when I think about your story, what I love about it is the Lord has taken you in and out of pastoral positions. He's taken you in and out of vocational ministry. And I've heard you say before, not the least of which was in the first version of trying to record this podcast, that you got a front row seat to watching people do ministry in a variety of contexts. And regardless of where you've been, the jobs you've held, and I do want us to walk through all of them. Because I hope that in addition to people getting to know you a little bit and listening to this podcast, that they'll also hear, okay, if Frank can do that there, like if you can love the Lord on an oil rig, then you can certainly love the Lord in really any pick a job. It doesn't matter what it is that someone does. So why don't you walk us through that journey of kind of your calling to vocational ministry and the way the Lord has led you and your family since then?
Yeah, Lee. So I go back to Mississippi, and I go back to being a young teenager, and 1996. Centrifuge, jars of clay, flood. You know what I'm saying? The good old days.
I mean, if you keep throwing names like that at people, somebody's gonna cry.
That's right. That's right. Right. Friends are friends forever. Michael W. Smith. And so, so I go back to 1996, man, and I think I was like 14 or 15 years old at the time, and it was a youth camp, and I remember just being in the room, and probably for the first time, actually kind of thinking, man, this is something I would love to do. Like, and it was on, God began to give me a passion for people, and for my peers. And I had been obviously involved in student ministry as a student growing up, and, children's ministry as a kid. And we were always at church when the doors were open, man. And if we were going to take a trip, it was with the church. If we were going to, do anything fun, it was with the church.
There was no fun outside the church.
Well, it's small.
There was no good fun.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think my mom and daddy used to say, nothing after 10 is healthy.
That's right. If it's outside the church and after 10, it's not a good thing.
That's right. Don't do it.
That's right.
And so, so anything that we were going to do, it involved church, right? Yeah. And so I remember 96 going to camp and then thinking to myself, man, this is fun. And man, like just seeing God move that week, man, who wouldn't want to be a part of something like that?
Yeah.
Right. And so, I had conversations with our student pastor at the time. I was like, hey man, like, this may be what the Lord wants me to do. And at the time, like the thought is, well, I can't preach right now. I'm 14.
That's right.
Like what? I can't. I'm still trying to find revelations. You know what I'm saying? In the back of the Bible. And I'm literally turning to the table of context.
It's on page 2,237.
It's all the way in the back, dude. You should just be able to find it. And so I'm bumping my head against the wall. What does somebody at 14 do?
Yeah.
And so, man, I'm so thankful for Bob. He was our student pastor, and he was bivocational. He worked at the church. He worked at the church part-time. He also, ended up also helping with worship at the church, and then also was working, I believe, at our high school as a band director.
Yeah.
And so, man, I saw him do all of that to the glory of God. Faithful in the classroom, faithful at the church, faithful in there with a bunch of crazy students. And so I just had a conversation. I'm like, man, I think this is what God wants me to do. Don't know what it looks like. And so he was very intentional with giving me opportunities to share devotionals. And, it was supposed to be 12 minutes and it was 3. and I might have messed up in something, but I was trying.
That's right.
And he was helping.
That's right.
And so that kind of, God really began to use all of those things to give me a passion for ministry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And with Bob, it was, yes, on staff, but also just in normal day life. And so super thankful for him.
Yeah.
And so, man, I, obviously, met my wife and we, graduated high school, and it's like, well, dude, you're going to college. And so, it's like, well, okay, I'd like to go to college.
Yeah.
Had no idea what I was going to do. I got a scholarship to play soccer at a small college in Mississippi. So I was like, well, that's what I'm going to do. And man, I took classes, and man, I was, again, bumping my head against the wall, trying to figure out, what do I do? I enjoy sports, so I'm going to go and be a coach, and I'm going to teach a class. And man, that's not what I wanted to do. Yeah. And so I ended up getting on the leadership team for BSU, Baptist Student Union, BCM, I think is what they have here at Auburn.
Yeah.
And man, through conversations with our director, she's like, hey, have you thought about like seminary? I was like, and it was almost like a light bulb went off.
Yeah.
Wow, I can do that.
Yeah.
And see, at the time, I didn't even know there was an undergrad program at seminaries, and they may have just kind of started. And so she was like, man, you need to call New Orleans Seminary and have conversations with them. So I did. Yeah. And I found out, man, you can get an undergrad degree from a seminary.
Yeah.
And man, this is something I'm interested in. And so I did.
Nice.
I did. And so that's what I did for school.
Okay.
And it was most of it online, and I'd have to go down to New Orleans to take classes. And so I did all of that, but still not 100% sure what all that was going to look like.
Sure.
And then she pulls me aside and she's like, oh, also, by the way, we got a phone call from a small church. They are interested in hiring a part-time children's and student pastor.
Yeah.
And so I was like, man, that sounds like a great idea.
Let's do that.
Let's do that. And so I did that. I went and met with the pastor, and man, one of the most amazing men I've ever met. Such a phenomenal guy. And I sat down. I was like, hey, dude, like, I don't really know what I'm doing, but you need somebody, and I can try to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so I did.
Yeah.
And he was gracious and kind.
I love that.
And so that kind of, and so right about that same time, Amy and I ended up getting married, and that began our journey in ministry. And so we've been able to serve on staff at churches in Mississippi, Georgia, and Alabama. And most of those roles have been in student ministry, high school, middle school, college, and kind of weaved in there have been times where, because there was a time we moved back to Mississippi, my grandmother had gotten sick, and so we wanted to try to be closer to her, and so we moved back to Mississippi. And so during that time, I worked a different job. And so, but yeah, man, we've been on staff at churches, as you alluded to. I've worked in oil and gas before. Kind of oil and gas is, man, it's built into my family's DNA.
Sure.
Man, my grandfather did it. Okay. He was on rigs off the coast of South Africa and like all over the continent, and my dad did it. My uncles have done it. My brothers have done it, and so that's always been something that I've been interested in.
Yeah,
and that's what my dad did.
Right.
And he did that, and he probably did that until I was 5 years old. He was always home 2 weeks, gone 2 weeks, home 3 weeks, gone 3 weeks. Those kind of situations, and so, man, I grew up idolizing my dad because of the hard work that he did.
Sure.
And I wanted to do that.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to be a part of that life. And so yeah, man. So there were times when I was on an oil rig in West Texas, 1,000 degrees outside,
Yes.
throwing tongs, putting pipe into the ground. And then there were also, and my little brother was like, hey man, like, I know you're out there breaking your back doing roughneck work, but have you ever thought about working on a pipeline? He was like, it's not as hard and it's more money. And I'm like, bro, like roughneck work, when you put 12 to 16 hours in and you're coming off tower, bro, you can't feel your legs.
Yeah, that's long.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, so you're telling me this job is easier?
You passed hurt a long time
Let's
ago.
do that. I've spent time working on staff in churches and been so thankful for those opportunities.
Yeah.
And kind of weaved in and out of there has been those times where I've worked on oil rigs. I've worked, laying pipe on pipelines. And then there have also been some times in there, man, that I worked in radio. Right. And I absolutely loved my time. And those times have been paired with times that I was in ministry.
Yeah, sure.
So like, I would host a morning radio show, from, 6 until 9.
Yeah.
And then I would go to the church and work at the church, and so
radio days being pre-podcast days.
Pre-podcast.
When that was an opportunity to take whatever it was the Lord had put on your heart to share with people who were listening that were not present in the studio with you.
Right.
Not dissimilar to a modern day version of a podcast. I'd love to, if you want to expound any more on radio days.
So it really kind of how that started was I had taken a job at a church in Mississippi, and there were a couple student pastors. First of all, it was a Christian music desert. Like there was, like, we had one awesome station in Jackson, Mississippi. You had to get towards Canton to be able to pick it up. And then there was another radio station in Tupelo, but like the wind had to be blowing just right for you to be able to catch it. And so, there's like this huge wave of like Christian music where, man, it was popping.
Yeah.
As the kids say, right?
Popping.
It was hopping. And so like these youth pastors are like, we want to do this.
Right.
And so a couple guys in my hometown, they started doing it. And so they would literally just go to the radio station for 2 hours on a Sunday night, and they had a radio show.
Talk about whatever they wanted.
Whatever they wanted to, played music, and people loved it. So fast forward, those guys took churches in other places. And so there was just a void.
Yeah.
And so, man, when I went back home, I had conversations with other student pastors, like, let's do this. And so we did.
Nice.
And it just went great. It went great. We enjoyed it. The kids enjoyed it. People were calling. And so that's kind of how I got in radio, was we started that. And then the owners of the radio station, they offered me a position.
Nice.
To host the morning show. And so that's kind of the segue into that. So the Sunday night show was Christian music.
Sure.
The Monday through Friday was country.
Yes.
And so and I'll never forget, I walked in the first time, and the owner of the station, he was like, we're going to call it Making Bacon. And I'm like, all right, man, that sounds good. And so, like, in the background, you hear this sizzle.
Shh.
And he's like,
sound effects.
And he's like, man, I think the bacon's burning. And so, anyway, it was fun.
God.
It was fun. I really enjoyed it.
All right, because people are going to ask.
Yeah.
I need to know, is there proof of this? Like, can we find this somewhere?
Right.
In the deep, dark versions of, maybe not those dark versions of the internet,
Right.
but like in the, let's see, what is that? That's early 2000s, mid 2000s, whenever that was.
Early 2000s.
Can we find evidence of these days on the radio?
So here's the problem, Lee. We didn't actually get internet in my hometown until 2010. I can't remember if I've said that before or not. That's just how it was. And so I've got a hard drive somewhere. I was having a conversation with other staff members somewhere that's got like commercials and content. I need to find it. I don't know where it is, but if I find it, I'll let you know.
If we find it, it will appropriately be played somewhere. Maybe we'll just pull snippets out and add them to podcasts randomly.
Yeah, and 98% of what I said was appropriate.
Okay, well, we'll make sure we work through the Making Bacon version of what's happening on the radio station.
My goodness.
Yeah. So you guys got color TV in 1998, and you got internet in 2010.
No, we didn't get it. Yeah, 2010.
You got
late part of 2010, right after they brought the McDonald's and the Walmart. We had a Fred's. Okay, we had a Fred's. Do you know what a Fred's is?
I do know what a Fred's is.
Yeah, I love Fred's.
Yeah, I've been to small towns.
So I feel like we're off track. I'm sorry.
Okay, all right. So let's bring it back. But the faithfulness of God from the very beginning through the wonderful women, the multiple generations in your life, to have brought another fantastic woman into your life as now your helpmate and wife. The Lord continues to bring amazing women into your life now in your daughters, and the Lord has been faithful to go before you in all of these ways, providing for your family, sometimes through oil and gas, sometimes through vocational ministry. Let's jump all the way to you guys moving to this area, moving from Georgia to Auburn. And really the Lord's leading not only to this church, specifically Grace Auburn, and you coming on staff after Amy has been on staff for several years. But I'd love to hear the Lord's really, growing burden in your own soul for biblical counseling. How does that play out in the local church? And we'll try to weave that story together into where we are today here at Grace Auburn.
Yeah, so I was serving in Houston, Texas at the time. I was on a project out there. Our home base was LaGrange, Georgia, had been for many years. And so at the time I was working on the pipeline, so I was traveling during that time of what I like to call tent making. Mm-hmm. I kind of began to feel this burden, man, in my heart for counseling. And again, some tragedy had kind of struck with some people that I knew of, man, just making some horrible life decisions, man. Yeah. And it really kind of opened my eyes up to the need for more counselors, and specifically biblical counselors. And so I began this journey of trying to learn, man, as much as I could learn on the forefront of biblical counseling, and man, how do you care well for people? Yeah. And so, man, that led me to the Association of Biblical Counselors, and man, I started working towards certification in that, and started classes, and so kind of what led us to, so that's kind of the biblical counseling portion. Sure. Of that. Yeah. I'm still at this time, I'm still working. Yep. And so a project was ending in Texas. And man, this guy just happened to come across my LinkedIn profile, and he calls and he's like, "Hey man, I see that you're, in Texas, but you're from Georgia. Man, there's a job that's opened up 40 minutes from your house. Do you want to come home?" And I'm like, "Yes.
Yes, I do.
I would love to come home."
Yes, I do.
So one thing led to another. The project ended, and I had an interview. I got a job. Nice. And I got a job here in Opelika. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So that brought us back home. I continued my schooling through ABC, and so that was the transition from being in Georgia, working in oil and gas, to now moving here, getting a job, also in construction, more so asphalt paving. Yeah, yeah. And so that brought us here. And so when we got moved here, obviously we weren't driving back to LaGrange for church. Sure. And so we, really started a journey of where will we go here? Yeah. Who are going to be our people, right? And so we visited around a couple churches for probably about a year. And we homeschool. And so Amy met some people through homeschooling and stuff. And man, they kept saying, "Man, you should come visit Grace Auburn." Yeah. And, we finally did. Yeah. And so the transition was, Amy was having people invite her to come to church, us to come to church here. And then I also met somebody that was like, "Hey," I was like, "Man, where do you go to church?" He was like, "Oh, we go to Grace Auburn." And he was like, "Hey, you should come visit Grace Auburn." So we both had people, different people. Yeah. Like, "Hey, come to church. And so, the last thing we want to do is church hop. Sure. Right. So we had been visiting somewhere for about a year, a couple churches. And so finally it was, well, let's just go. We'll just go. And so we pulled into the parking lot and came in, and Lee, it was, man, when people ask me, the word was central focus. You know what I'm saying? And the worship pointed towards Jesus. Yeah. The word was the word, and it was lifted. And so, we left after that first service, and I'll never forget, we got back in the vehicle, and I was not going to say a word. I was like, I'm not saying anything. I'm going to be quiet. And so I sat there just kind of humming and looking around, and Amy says, "Well," and I said, "Well, nothing," She was like, "What'd you think?" I said, "What did you think?" You know what I'm saying? And so, because I wanted to hear, I want to hear her heart, what she thought. And we were both like, man, the Lord is at work there. And that was our first service. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And we knew at that moment, this is where we wanted to be. Yeah. And we wanted to be, we didn't feel like we had to go anywhere else. That's good. And so we just we had a peace about it. And it all really kind of boils down to, we already knew a few people here.
Sure.
But we knew that, man, we wanted to come and get involved, and be all in. And so being in a community group and meeting people and serving. And so it really didn't take much time after visiting to know this is where we wanted to be.
That's it.
So, yeah. But it comes down to this authenticity that we feel by being here.
Yeah.
And it's when Matt or you or Caleb or Jeff, man, when you deliver the word, like, it's not flippant. It is, man, you can tell that you guys have been with Jesus in your preparation. And the same thing with Liam or Joel or whoever's going to be leading us in worship. Man, there's this authenticity of wanting to be a conduit for the Holy Spirit to just work.
Yes, good.
And man, it's just beautiful. So
I love that. I love that your initial experience was everything pointed to Jesus or was about Jesus. I think when we think about the cult of personality in our day, or you think about any number of reasons people decide they want to experience and continue to experience something from a church, I love hearing stories of the Lord saying, no, in this church, it's going to point to me, and it's going to be your opportunity is not as much, or it is as much to receive as it is to give. Like there's much to do, there's much work to be done. There's an incredible focus on me and my kingdom, and so that's exciting for me to hear. Just knowing that was your experience so many years ago. Fast forward just a little bit, Amy comes onto our staff team. She takes one job, and as was the case with multiple people on our team, a lot of people said, my yes is on the table, now what do I need to do? And people come onto our team and then pivot into a more preferred role or a role that more fits their gifting. So that was certainly true of Amy in terms of what she does now in hospitality. Let's talk through your coming on staff to Grace Auburn, really your progression through continuing to be in asphalt paving, continuing to pursue counseling degree, continuing to get certifications through ABC and all the things to where we are now. And so I want to ask you the question, why do you want to work for this church? If you could do any number of things, and the Lord knows you've done lots of things and could do lots of things, why, especially in light of your heart for, as a pastor, your heart for counseling, knowing people, serving people. You said at the very beginning that you felt called to people, not to any specific job, but to love people well.
Yeah.
And I can attest that you do that incredibly well. So why here? Why do you want to work for Grace Auburn Church?
yeah, I would probably say, Lee, the snacks.
Yes. Well, you are you are personally connected to the one who provides so many of them. So do the snacks that we have in the office,
man,
are they your preferences, or she just gets a variety?
I'll tell you this, Lee. Amy does a great job of asking everyone what kind of snacks they like. So no, but on a serious note, man, I had a conversation that we had a situation where we brought in probably 10 or 15 counselors. And this was probably a year ago.
Yeah.
And we had conversations with them about what their needs were. Because at the time, different counseling ministries here in town and just, Christian counselors that had their private practices.
Yeah.
And so we would ask them, like, what do you need?
Yeah.
And how can the local church and the seminary, how can we better help you and assist you? And the question was asked, what percentage of the people that you're seeing on a daily basis could be seen and cared for in the local church? And man, almost unanimously in that circle of these well-known counselors was 85 to 90% of the people that we see could be seen in the local church. Man. And man, that caused a light bulb to go off in my head. Yeah. Okay, if they could be seen in the local church, why aren't they? Yeah. Like, why do people that need care feel like they have to go outside the walls of the church to get care? And so again, that has my head spinning and thinking through, okay, I'm a part of the local church. Again, I'm not on staff at a church at the time, but there's got to be something that can be done. Yeah. Like, is there training? Is there conversations? Is there providing a space for that? Like, what does that look like as a whole to create a culture of care? Yeah. Right. And so, at the time, Jeff was going to be moving into community groups and kind of taking that. So in my mind, in my heart, I thought, where there may be an opportunity for something like that at Grace Auburn. And so that's when I reached out and I mentioned to you, like, hey, here's some things that I'm interested in, things that I love. I finished up my certification in April. I would love an opportunity. And so that led us to conversations about the possibility of that actually happening.
Yeah.
Which opened the door for me to now be able to do this in a full-time capacity.
Yeah.
And so, man, my heart is really for figuring out a way to kind of foster this culture of care where, almost living out the one another's.
Yes.
And just this care and providing a space to be able to do that. And obviously, with community groups, and we see a lot of that within our community groups of community group leaders and really kind of leading the charge in that.
Yes.
But also just figuring out how to help dads be, help them with being dads, moms with being moms, and leading their kids to Jesus and having those conversations and figuring out what all that could look like. And then with marriage mentoring, man, we could go on and on and on, because I get super fired up about this, right?
Yeah.
But really, just trying to create that culture of care where if somebody has a need, we're able to try to help meet that need. Not that you and I can be the ones to do that, because it doesn't hinge on you and I,
right?
But also just the body really being the body.
Yes.
And so, so that's kind of it. That's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Just kind of some thoughts built around it.
Well, I love that. And like you said, we probably will in future versions of conversations at this table, because we will for sure do this more often than just this one time. I think we could go long form into a lot of different directions on how we as the church can and should learn to love one another well. Mm-hmm. And so, to be honest, I'm thrilled and excited about all that is before us, about all that is in store for this church between now and when Jesus comes back or one of us goes home. And in the meantime, we're going to continue the work. And so I'm honored. I'm excited. I'm thrilled to have you on our team. You are a gift and a blessing. If you don't have any final thoughts, or if you do have any final thoughts, no? Okay, we will... we'll put a pin in so many of those conversations. Man, you got me all kinds of fired up thinking all the things. And just so everyone knows, we've had so many conversations for what feels like years, and in some ways kind of has been, but over the last several months, having Frank on staff now, really excited so much for the future of loving and caring for one another as the Lord continues to grow this body, as we move into Skyway and we have space for people to meet one another, and people aren't climbing over children to get to a space to have an intimate conversation with a pastor or a counselor. We will get there. We're excited for it. Much to come on that front. So, my brother, thank you for this conversation. Thank you for your heart, and I'm excited for all that's ahead.
Me too, bud.
On behalf of the Grace Auburn Church family, thank you for listening to the Grace Auburn Church podcast. If you'd like more information about partnering with us and our mission, or ways that you can get connected, please go to our website, graceauburn.church.